Hi, my name is Lori, and this is my beloved Great Dane, Truman. Truman died tragically in 2009, and it's all my fault. You're about to discover the truth about commercial dog food that's causing thousands of dogs around the world to die well before their natural time. I know because it happened to me. First, I want to tell you I wasn't always an expert on nutrition for pets. I wasn't always lucky enough to work side by side with 3 veterinarians. Sadly, back then, I hadn't read even one article on dog nutrition. And I certainly hadn't completed thousands of hours of research on how dog food is really made. Quite frankly, the world wasn't there yet. It was 2002, and I just bought my first Great Dane puppy. I was so excited. The first few years of his life went great. He seemed like any other dog, really. He's a little bit unusual traits as far as having a dry coat and some hot spots. And maybe he lacked a little bit of energy for such a young dog. We just thought maybe he was a little lazy. You know what I mean? We probably loved him even a little more for it. Then one day, when Truman was playing with my son Brooks, I noticed he was slightly limping and had a really small bump on his leg. So I took him to the vet, and really, I wasn't that worried until I saw the look on my vet's face. He obviously knew something I didn't. The moment I saw his face, my stomach twisted in knots. It was horrible. I remember him looking at me and he said, "Lori, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but Truman has carcinoma in his leg." At that point, I wasn't even sure what that was. He then went on to say, "The good news is it's not in his bloodstream. The bad news is it's on his front leg and it's going to continue to get worse. The only options we have are removing his leg," I was horrified, "or giving him radiation and or chemotherapy." Now, having lost my mom to leukemia, I kind of knew what that was going to look like. And let me tell you, it's not pretty. He cautioned, "Those are typically very painful and don't give great results." Having lost my mom at 19, I pretty much know that. So at this point, my heart's pounding in my chest. I'm devastated. And it only got worse when he said, "Normally I'd recommend removing his leg, but with his size and the fact that 80% of his weight is on his front legs, I can't promise you to even be able to walk if we did that either." I think you can imagine. I was so upset. My love and joy was just given a death sentence in my mind. Even now, it makes me sick to think about it. Either we remove his leg and see what happens, or we choose to put him down. On top of all of this, I was pregnant with twin boys. Yes, at the ripe old age of 38. And with my hormones raging, I was an emotional mess. I didn't know what the right thing was to do. Finally, I just did what most any mother would do. Anything I could to save my baby's life. Promising myself if he seemed to be in any pain, I'd help ease his way out of his body no matter how hard it was for me. Then we removed his leg and we waited, praying for the very best. It was one of the darkest periods in my life. I kept wondering, had I just sentenced my beloved to an even more painful life? I wasn't sure if it was selfish of me or not. All I knew is I believed I owed it to him to try. You know what I mean? And a few weeks later, we got our miracle. To see an oversized Great Dane racing across the front lawn on 3 legs, well, unless he was bounding towards you, which was a little scary, I have to admit. Let's just say those brakes didn't work like they used to. Yet Truman being on 3 legs didn't matter to us, and it didn't seem to matter to him either. He did great. It's amazing what your dog will overcome to stay with you. Eventually, though, it became too much. With too much weight on his right front leg causing too much strain on his neck, he developed a really painful bone spur about 7 months later. And it became nearly impossible for him to walk because he was in so much pain. Devastated, I accepted I had to say goodbye to the best friend I'd ever had. To this day, I still tear up when I think about Truman. If you've ever had to put your dog down before, I know you know what I'm talking about. Even if you haven't, I'm sure you can imagine how traumatic it would be. It's awful. Not a day goes by when I don't think about Truman. He changed my life, and that's why I vowed to make it my life's work to honor him. I want to reach out to as many people as I possibly can to help them so this doesn't happen to them, so it doesn't happen to you. Now, I'm not sure I can say if I knew then what I know now, it would have changed things. God's will is God's will, and I'm not embarrassed to say that I do believe in a higher power, especially when it comes to the gift of animal companionship. However, in that same vein, I know now I wasn't following the best plan back then. And I'd also tell you why I can't go back in time and know for sure. I do wish someone would have shown me a better way. And that's why I made this free presentation. I want your dog to have the best chance to live his longest, happiest, and most healthy life. Yet, but before we discuss that, let me ask you this. Did you know that your dog is 4 times more likely to die of breast cancer than you are, 8 times more likely to die of bone cancer than you are, and get this, your dog is 35 times more likely to die of skin cancer than you are? They have fur? I found this unbelievable. And as unbelievable as that may sound, it's absolutely true. The number of dogs dying from cancer is rising. 12 million dogs and cats are diagnosed with cancer every year. Considering 30 years ago, dogs were not dying in droves from cancer, liver, and kidney disease, well, I think you could say this is a relatively new phenomenon. One that sadly is almost expected today. And now, many scientists, vets, and researchers are starting to think, and I completely agree, the problem could be as simple as what you're putting in your dog's bowl. And if you're like me, you might even be paying top dollar right now for your dog's food. Yet some of these chemicals used to preserve even premium pet foods are proven cancer-causing agents. Mouth cancer is actually the 4th leading cause of cancer. And I'm going to give you more on this in just a minute. But you see, I really thought what I was feeding Truman was a great brand of dog food. I'm sure you're no different. Yet now I realize I had no idea what he was really eating. And in the end, I believe Truman paid the ultimate price for my lack of knowledge. I really believe that. And that's why I made this free presentation. To keep you from making the same uninformed choices I had already made. You see, I discovered I wasn't the only misguided dog lover out there. In fact, according to a recent web survey, 4 out of 5 people could not correctly identify harmful ingredients in their dog's food. And while it's still incredibly hard for me to admit it right now, I was one of the 4 people who simply didn't know what I didn't know. Sadly, I believe this was a massive, fatal mistake for my dog Truman. And that's why I began to develop many relationships with multiple veterinarians I had to know. I also talked to several scientists over the last 3 years because I wanted answers. It still took me investing thousands of dollars on research and development to really understand and verify, that's the important part, what I wish I had understood then. Your choice really is your dog's voice. You have to choose as if their life depends on it. You have to, because it absolutely does. I'm here to tell you that it absolutely does. Today, I'm going to reveal the 3 key ingredients absolutely missing from 98% of all traditional dog food. Plus, I'm going to share with you why some experts believe these 3 super ingredients are of vital importance to your dog's health, and how they can help to promote a healthier, longer life for your dog. Those experts even suggest that your dog could live at least 3 to 5 years longer. Plus, you could potentially save $2,000 or more on unnecessary vet bills along the way, just by reducing the risk of your dog being exposed to this one ingredient. And I'll be explaining that too, so just stay with me. Today, you're also going to discover the 3 dirty secrets top insiders in the pet industry never want you to know. And while you may think you've heard it all before, I guarantee you haven't heard what's coming next. It's something that, quite frankly, I didn't believe myself. Not at first, anyway. It was the fact that a dog living 20 years or more is absolutely possible. It's true. It's in USA Today. The oldest documented dog was an Australian cattle dog named Bluey, who lived to be 29 and a half years old. And yet, same article, they referenced another dog, a collie from the Australian outback named Jerry. Jerry was discovered in 2004 who was living as an energetic and healthy 27-year-old dog. That's 189 years in human years. And according to Dr. Nelson, that was a vet who personally examined Jerry from the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, Dr. Nelson said he will be 27 years in August. I have no doubt at all he could push on to 28 going by his good body condition. That's incredible. And here's the most exciting part. Both dogs had one thing in common. They both ate something most dogs nowadays do not. Not on a regular basis anyway. Remember those 3 vital ingredients I told you about when we first met? Hint, they ate those. I'll explain in a minute. You see, even though these 2 dogs lived over 50 years apart, they both ate an alpha prey model diet, whether they knew it or not. And if you haven't heard about it before today, don't feel bad. You're not alone. When my Trumie died, I'd never even heard of it. My vet certainly didn't mention it. And that's why I'm pulling back the curtain today. Someone should have said something. Someone needs to explain why dogs and cats are not living longer and healthier lives. Now, first I have to warn you. This impression today, it's not for everybody. It's not going to be pretty. And you can tell yourself, if you want to, that it's all just a bunch of baloney. But that will be to your dog's detriment later. I promise you that. Or you can choose to listen very closely for the next few minutes while I reveal what some people in the pet industry definitely do not want you to know. That's how to read your dog's food ingredients label and understand what it really means. You see, very few people know, much less understand, just what those ingredients are that are listed on the back of the bag. Not to mention what they really look like before being transformed into your dog's food. And that's why I want to bring to your attention today what experts have known for years. What you're feeding your dog does not look like this. It really looks like this, which is what the fastest and least expensive process of making food for them looks like. And I use the term food loosely, and you're about to see why. All you're doing right now by buying some of these foods is helping the wallets of the big dogs monopolizing this industry get even fatter right along with your dog. And there's no one, I mean no one, standing guard, that's key, to uphold a standard we can all live with. Which is what I think bothered me the most, if you want to know the truth. While there is an organization who's supposed to protect your dog's nutrition, it's actually being manipulated by some very sophisticated marketers. According to Adweek in 2013, some of these big brands have ad budgets that are well over $50 million. To understand how this could happen, you need to know how the dog food biz got started in the first place. Because over 50 years ago, the pet food industry simply didn't exist. Not as you know it today anyway, and this is coming from the New York Times. They did an article and they were talking about how back then, most dogs lived on leftovers or butcher's excess, extra pieces of meat. Until 1860. Now I say 1860 because that's when an American by the name of James Pratt produced the first commercial quote-unquote dog food. It really wasn't dog food, it was just a biscuit that people fed their dogs, kind of like a treat. But he did it because he saw the boats at the dock on the water, he actually lived in Cincinnati, throwing out these biscuits to dogs, and he got the idea, hey, I should create that and manufacture it and sell it. Soon, other companies followed. Remind you, this is coming from Harvard paper that was written. It's published online. So these companies followed, causing the market to grow. When canned horse meat was created, it exploded. It went off, they started canning horse meat and feeding it to dogs. Until finally senators took notice because people were starting to complain, and they began to add other protein sources. But when metal was needed for the war, dry foods became more popular because they couldn't can the dog food. But until that point, at its peak, canned food was at 90% of the market. Can you believe that? 90% of the market. This war also caused the American diet to change, which later impacted our pets.